researchers have earlier thought that our feelings and emotions are largely associated more with the heart than with the head. They therefore felt that it couldn't be studied up or measured up in laboratory experiments. But we now know that our feelings and emotions have their representations in our head. We now know that the whole human behavior is a result of physical processes in the brain. But with 100 billion neurons connected by 100 trillion synapses, there's a vast amount of complexity, and human behavior is not in any way easily predictable. Gerald Edelman, the Nobel laureate, an expert on brain connections, said once that if you start counting one connection per second, you will stop counting 32 million years later. Such is the complexity of those neuronal connections of our CNS, central nervous system. Of that 2-pound mass of jelly that's inside of a skull that can be held in the palm of our hand, but with which, as someone said, we can contemplate the interstellar vastness of space. Emotions can generally be reduced to 4 basics: gladness, sadness, madness, and scaredness, or glad, sad, mad, scared. Now, all emotions are good and necessary until we have control over them. But indulgence in excess invariably leads to either addictions or unprovoked aggressions or manic depressions and so on. Emotions such as anger and fear are in fact evolutionarily designed as automatic intelligences that guide an organism to do what is most convenient for that organism to survive. Because if there is no fear, we may be killed anytime. If there is no anchor, we may be taken for a ride anytime. Thus, it's our natural alarm system or safety device or defense mechanism which nature has bestowed us with, which has become part and parcel of all organisms. But that's part of our problem too, because emotion doesn't operate on actual physical threat, instead on perceived and imagined ones. As a result, it's sometimes productive, sometimes destructive, sometimes misleading, sometimes life-saving. Hence the need to regulate them is the absolute, when and where we can and we should, to be right, to be positive, to be prudent, to be productive. Now, gladness as emotion. Gladness as emotion is excellent because when we are happy, the brain produces more oxytocin, the brain produces more serotonin, which are hormones, they are immunomodulators, they fine-tune the person's immune system. As a result, the person has higher resistance to disease and infection. But happiness, when experienced on a consistent basis in an unbridled manner, addiction begins to set in, because emotions are neuropeptides. They dock into the cell, alters our state, affects us at the cellular level. When it happens on a regular basis, the cell becomes addicted to that particular chemical. The cell gets calibrated to higher and higher levels, and then the cell needs more and more, as it happens with addictions of drug, alcohol, or pornography. But when it is drug, alcohol, or pornography, we recognize them as addiction, we call them as addiction. But when it is addiction to make money, addiction to power, addiction to position, addiction to possession, we don't call them as addiction, we don't recognize them as addiction. We are euphemistic about them. We call them passions, we call them obsessions, we call them fascinations. But deep down, they are all addictions, nothing more and nothing less. Fanaticism, extremism, racism are all addictions of different forms. All of us are affected with different emotional addictions in varying degrees of various things. The biggest addiction of all addiction is the emotional addiction all of us are affected with. Some are good, some are bad. Some are productive, some are destructive. Some are blatant, some are latent. Colonel Gaddafi was a power addict. Joseph Stalin was an ideological addict. A.R. Rahman is a musical addict. Albert Einstein was a logical addict. Because he always thought along logical lines. He always went into the whys and hows of things. At the age of 15, he asked the question, if I ride my bike at the speed of the light and if I turn the headlight on, will I have light? If he can answer this question at the age of 15, he certainly was a logical addict. It's very important to understand what happens inside our head when addiction sets in. That area in the brain that represents that particular activity becomes anatomically mature because of the constant use of that particular area, and that is what causes addiction. Now, sadness as emotion. Sadness is an integral part of human life. If we are not sad when occasion demands, we are not humans. Gladness and sadness are two sides of the same coin of life. But sadness in its extreme leads to deep depression. Depression suppresses immunity. Post 9/11 heart attacks, which were in their hundreds, were the results of deep depression and high stresses, since they have lost their loved ones with the collapse of the Twin Tower. Now, these are some of the pluses and minuses of emotions in general. While there are many, the list can go on and on. Sadness in its extreme even leads to suicide, and madness in its extreme even leads to homicide. As if suicide and homicide are not enough, we now have a new age phenomenon which is suicidally homicidal. You know what it means, and I don't want to go into that. Therefore, be it gladness, be it sadness, be it fear, be it anger, it's very important to be emotionally wise, to have the best out of our emotions. There are many descriptions for emotional intelligence. One of them that I found good is that emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor and manage one's own and that of others' emotions and feelings. It's self-awareness and self-management, social awareness and relationship management. It's impulse control and anchor management. It's understanding and recognizing the feelings and emotions of others. It's understanding why we do what we do and why we think the way we think, or what makes us feel the way we feel. It's tuning into the emotional cues of others, the non-verbal cues of others, understanding the unspoken dynamics of the situation, because men communicate more without words than they do with words. Whatever we say or do or fail to say or fail to do is always making our relations with the other either a little better or a little worse, or a lot better or a lot worse, subterraneously, which some men sometimes miserably fail to understand. Thus, emotional ignorance is the cause of many ills that plague the world today. It's far too easier for one to solve the most complicated of technical problems today than human problems, which is why someone said that the next level in human efficiency, human productivity and human happiness will only come from understanding the inner technology of one's own system. We have explored the inexplorables outside of us, but have failed miserably to understand the technology inside of us. The technology that drives our behavior, the technology that drives our thoughts, that drives our taste, that drives our hate, that drives our likes and dislikes, that sometimes makes us, sometimes mars us, that made Bill Clinton a proud, brilliant president, but at the same time a not so proud prurient. Controlling one's impulses of the utmost importance. Exploring the demons inside of us is as important as exploring the genius inside of us. Educating our heart is as important as educating our head. We have learned how to be head smart, but we have not learned how to be heart smart. Therefore, be it personal life, professional life, business life, be it any domain, these non-intellectual factors, these soft skills have hard consequences. A study conducted at the professional front has revealed that IQ and professional skill account only for 40 to 50% of the ingredient for success. mere possession of a high IQ, high technical skill, professional skill, presentational skill, cognitive ability, intellectual acumen can certainly get one hired for sure. They are sure predictors of what job one can get. But once into the job, how you handle yourself and how you handle your relations with the other matter as much as your job smartness. Relational dynamics is very crucial to professional success. On the business front, the new currency in the business world today is relationship. On the personal front, someone who is an expert on EI, emotional intelligence, speaking on personal relations, even went to the extent of saying before a gathering that I can interview 100 couples and can predict with 95% accuracy. That's a huge predictive validity. He said, I can predict with 95% accuracy which of you will still be together in a happy, loving relationship for 5 years from now based on one single EQ test, which is how skillfully you can air your grievances, how skilled you are in the inner and interpersonal intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence, as I explained in my other videos, is controlling one's anger, containing one's feelings. Interpersonal intelligence is conducting oneself in a manner or those are not anchored. Now to cite what is said here is only to highlight how ignorant are we, how blissfully unaware are we of what transpires between us and others, which gradually builds up like a powder keg, only to be burst in the end. And how beautiful would it be if we recognize and understand the feelings and emotions of others and act accordingly. I do not subscribe to the view that EQ can well be measured, but I strongly believe in its learnability and teachability, because it's an established fact today that our heart takes precedence over our head. Our feeling sits in judgment over what is right and what is wrong. The feeling of our heart is several times not just stronger but swifter than the thinking of our head.